Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Painted in Color podcast. I'm co-host Lauren Brown, joined by co-host Mia Araujo and Eric Wilkerson. Today, we're talking about how we're dealing with everything as artists. Um, Things have changing very rapidly, and we're in very uncertain times. And we didn't want to keep going without at least addressing what's happening. And as an artist, what can we do on our respective places? How are we coping with it? What kind of art are we making? What are we doing to basically, protect ourselves and to keep ourselves healthy? So, Mia, Eric, this is a lot. This is a
Man,
lot.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. Already it's like hard to talk about
I
because
know.
like it's very easy to have things like be a bummer, and I at the very least wanted to just like talk to everybody who's listening to the show and say that if you're feeling that way, scared and alone, you're not alone. You know, we're here, we're there, we're feeling it with you. um I think the way that I am personally dealing with a lot of this stuff is the fact that I know that I have communities out there that like not even out there, but like with me and also out there that are here to support each other and here to uplift each other and give advice and assistance and just in general, like I call it building a fence around people. Like you build a fence around you and your community to like everybody's got each other, right? And for me, I think that's the best I can do is to make sure that like I have my community, and this is a part of that community, this here. Is to, talk about things that I feel like are important and to reach out to the people who are touched by the show and inspired by the show and let you know that you're not alone. And that's how I'm trying to go forward right now. And I'm curious from you, Mia or Eric, whoever wants to speak first, is like, what is your like, what are you doing right now? Like, how are you feeling?
Well, so when we're referring to the stuff that's kind of weighing on us, we're referring to the recent United States election, presidential election, and the fact that overwhelmingly uh, people in this country voted for someone that has been uh, accused of rape and uh, a slew, like a laundry list of other things. He's a felon and all these other things, and overwhelmingly voted for that. Hate, ran for hate, and people love him for it. So if you're on the other side of that fence and you're thinking, oh my God, how does that, what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to stay creative? How am I supposed to focus on life and just in general if there are people outside my bedroom window walking down the street with Nazi flags and sending me text messages telling me when to arrive to pick cotton tomorrow. And like this is stuff going on in the United States right now. Um, it's freaking out a lot of people. Um, Myself, I kind of just try to stay as grounded as possible, but I think honestly, I'm probably in not denial stage, but I don't want to hear the man's voice.
Yeah.
I don't. Um it makes me uneasy when I hear his voice, when I hear somebody say horrible things and they're in the highest office in the land. It just disturbs me. Um in a way that no other human being has ever disturbed me before. Like that, I just have a visceral reaction to seeing him on screen or his voice. So I just stopped watching the news. If there's something that important, it'll pop up on my phone and I'll read an article. But I don't watch the news anymore. Because it's just one story about what did he say this morning? What did he say? It's going to be every day for the next 4 years. Let's just hope that it's only 4 years where it's just going to be one horrible thing, one random tweet or something after another, where the news is just going to be fixated on on him. And I just don't want to live my life like that, where it's just a barrage of information. So, um, I don't, maybe I'm just closing my eyes, sticking my fingers in my ears, just kind of avoiding it. But um, I'm just trying to stay focused on creating the kind of art that I want to make. But I'm also kind of curious and fearful about who inside of our industry have those same kind of political views or endorsed and supported uh, hate. Are they gatekeepers? Are they art directors? Are they in positions of power over somebody's art or over somebody's career? How is that going to affect people coming out of school, that people that want to do this professionally? If they don't have the right skin tone or the right gender there's a number of things that if you're not a Christian white man in this country, uh this country is not for you. It's unfortunate to think like that, but it's the truth. So how does that affect the portfolios, the career path of people that are not that ideal that, this country, I don't know, it's a mess. It's a mess. But I just want to continue to just unapologetically create the kind of art that I want to make and try not to think about whatever racist art director or somebody that might see it and turn me down just because has nothing to do with the quality of the work, but who I represent in my art. Um, I don't want to, I try not to think about that, but it's just the reality that we live in. And I don't think that's going to go away. But it's just been emboldened. So,
What about you, Mia?
Yeah, no, it was definitely hard to sleep the first few nights, honestly. It's just I have a lot going on in my personal life too, in terms of just a lot of really stressful big things. But honestly, I feel like I was trying not to think about the election even the week that it happened because I had this dread like just in my whole body that I kind of felt like, oh God, I just don't want to even think about it, you know? And but yeah, anyway, my therapist actually said something interesting where she was like literally your life hasn't changed between now and like 2 weeks ago, right? Like, but it's just but my mind is so on fire, you know,
Yeah,
with the uncertainty in the future. And you know, all of us in our community too, we've been dealing with the whole AI threat and everything, and then everything else going on in the world. There's been horrific just things on the news constantly for I think the last 4 years. And so it's like on some level, it's like there's parts of me that are numb to it, but others that it's just like I was telling you earlier, Lauren, that it's like I feel like I'm kind of reaching the threshold of my coping mechanisms where it's like I can, in terms of very stressful things that I can handle at a time. And so,
yeah,
but I think that we've all been in this country, you know, really fortunate to not have to handle so many huge like existential things at a time. And it feels like in the future going forward with climate change, with elections and things like that, like the way things are trending, I guess I've just been realizing this week that it's like I just really need to up my coping mechanisms in terms of, I think when I used to think about the future, I used to think, oh, things will gradually get more peaceful. I'll hopefully make more money. I'll hopefully be more stable. Hopefully I'll have to worry about less things. But now I'm starting to see the future as I might have to worry about more things actually. And it's not,
Yeah.
and I think in the past that would have really stressed me out as someone with anxiety, right? Is that like, oh my gosh, more things to worry about. It's not going to ever stop. But I think it's like the idea of just like losing hope on some level, like liberating me in the sense that it's like, if I don't expect things to get better, and this is maybe the best it's going to be, excuse me, it's more about figuring out how I'm going to deal with all that worry that's just never going to go away, or all those stressful things. And I know that's not a very comforting thought, but it's the thing that's gotten me through this week and made me hopefully like get a little bit more sleep than I had been a couple weeks ago. And it's not an answer. It's just about like I have to find a way to just survive this, and we all do, right? It's about how do we
Mhm.
survive these next 4 years, if it's 4 years, like you said, Eric, like hopefully it is. Um, but yeah, I definitely had my thoughts in the beginning of just like, oh gosh, all this stuff that I've worked for the last 10, 12 years, what was it for? What was it all for? That definitely hit me for a while. But, at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm still proud I did that. And I wouldn't have changed anything about that. And I wouldn't change anything about what I'm going to make going forward. So, similar to you, Eric, I think just it's almost like there's two kinds of character arcs in movies where it's like there's the person that changes because they need to grow, and then there's somebody who actually the whole world is trying to break them and they just have to hold fast because their values actually are worth believing in and worth fighting for. And that's kind of where I feel like a lot of us are, like our values are worth fighting for even though the results ended up this way. Like I think there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with our values, but there's still a lot of people who do. And I'm just trying to
Yeah.
find strength in that and be like, this is not a reason to give up, to give in. Now's when these values get tested, right? It's like for people who haven't been through this. But then the other piece I want to, I guess, bring up is that my whole family, aside from my parents, are in Argentina. And for the last several decades, they've had horrific governments that have,
Mhm.
the value of their money overnight in the early 2000s was gone, and things like that, things that people are just now worrying about, maybe that could potentially happen in this country, but we haven't ever had to worry about that. And
Yeah.
I've always had kind of like that other view of what my family's had to deal with, and yet they've been able to live their lives somehow there and be happy and raise kids and all this kind of stuff and see a future for themselves there. And I think that I'm looking to them now in terms of like, how do you do that? Because we haven't been tested in that way as often in this country, and again, obviously depending on the demographic you're talking about, but yeah,
Yeah.
I
Because
don't know if
like,
anything I said just made sense, but
no, that made perfect sense. The way that I've been feeling about it is the fact that, and like Eric, what you said, like these gatekeepers, these art directors, or whoever it could be who supports this, in the industry, like we're afraid that they've been emboldened, yes, but the reality is that they've always been there. They've never like they haven't not been there. Um, and they always had the ability to stop us from doing what like from getting into the industry or rejecting us because the wrong color or the wrong name or whatever it is. They've always been there. And yeah, there's a long point in time, which is not really long in the history of this country, but a point in time where we're accepted because companies are making an active effort to include us. But that hasn't been the case for very long. And we've still been able to do amazing things in this country despite that. And everything that this country was built off of has been on the standard of it's been on the backs of immigrants and minorities and a lot of suffering and damage, but what was built and what came out of that were people who understood how to withstand this hardship and how to fight for better for themselves. And what I've been trying to do actively is to remember that that's where I come from because my family has been in this country for over 200 years. And despite everything that we've been put through, I'm still here. And I think that that's the thing that I'm really holding on to, because it's like, yeah, this is not new. This is something that has kind of been building up to since the founding of this country. And so we are used to having, a period of peace, but our lifetimes have been not very long. And the age of this country is not very old. So, it's this is my like position of hope, because it's legit what my history is. And I think despairing, what it does, it's almost intentional, that bombardment every
Yeah.
day from the news. He did this, he did that, this thing happened, everything's awful. Put your head in the sand and give up. I'm like, yeah, like there's a certain degree where I must have boundaries because I cannot function. But at the same time, I also have to know what I can do to make sure that me, my family, my friends, and the people, the groups of people who are struggling and fighting, there's support in some way or another. Everybody has a different resource. Some people have no money, but they have time. Some people have time, but they have no money. Some people are convincing. Some people make amazing art that can change hearts and minds. Some people can make music, etc. Everybody has something that they can contribute. And I'm trying to think of what my something is. I think I can support with my money. I can support with this platform of like being able to spread the message, like, hey, here's, we put it in the bio, place to donate to if like you can, well, here are these resources for you to directly give to. If you have time, maybe you can volunteer. Maybe you can participate in your local elections. Maybe you can participate in town halls to better your city or better your neighborhood or even better the life for your neighbor. Any of these little things, they all build up, because right now what has been flooding our timelines and flooding the news has been all negativity, and that's manufactured to make sure that you feel like you can't do anything to fix it. And that's simply not true. That's never been true.
That's
And
actually such
so,
a good point. Because it
yeah,
reminds me of the AI stuff too, where it's like all these companies are saying it's over, like this is in, like you can't stop it, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's like it's futile to resist, and that's exactly what they want you to believe, because
yeah,
you're your weakest when you're not, when you just think there's no hope and there's no way to. But this is actually the time to actually stand up for your values and to demand the future you want. Right? Is like not waiting and not just like rolling over. Right? It's just.
mhm,
But same with AI. It's like, don't wait for it to become inevitable. You have to fight now before it actually is a part of our lives, you know?
exactly. And the things that, that you and Carla and Sarah Anderson and, like, and Kelly McKernan have been fighting for, they are actually, things are happening because of it. We have Glaze, we have Nightshade, we have legislation that are like slowly coming out, and the law's always slow, but things are happening to stop it from advancing as quickly as it could be, for not just artists, but for, writers, for musicians, for, like each industry is fighting because we know what it will do and we know how bad it can be. And just staying silent. Like that's why I never subscribe to like when people like the AI people are like, oh, might as well just embrace it, adapt or die, or whatever it
Here to
is. It's
stay.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like what that's saying is give up. Give
Yeah.
up because we don't feel like hearing your voice right now. Because in reality, what happens is that every time we protest, every time we speak out, things actually do happen.
Yeah.
It's just like I think recently I had seen that like I think somewhere on Facebook um they were saying like what like oh, protests have done great, and like the 2020 protests, while nothing really happened, like the people protested, and it's like no, things did happen. Like those protests advocated for police wearing body cams and Confederate statues getting taken down and better treatment and better scrutiny of like violence against minority communities and Black people, and things have happened because of that. It shifted the way that culture sees how they treat people. And
Mhm.
a bunch of companies made a ton of regulations to make sure that they were hiring people of color and actually making sure that they're looking at these groups of people that they had previously basically neglected.
Mhm.
Now, who knows if we backslide on that, but that's how it was before. And so we've already dealt with it. So the reality that we're going into, yes, it's unprecedented, but it really isn't when you think about the history of how things typically run. It's just the first time that we are dealing with something like that. And I think what you said, Mia, resonated with me. It's like looking back at like people who already have to live in these kinds of situations. What do they do? Because they're certainly living somehow.
Yeah. And they're
They
making
really
art
are.
and they're making their lives and they're happy somehow. And I feel like we can do that too. And we can fight back for the world we want. And we should keep
Yeah.
fighting because I think that it's like there's also a thing my therapist always says, it's like sometimes it feels like you're taking two steps back to take one step forward. It feels like you're
Mm.
making less progress, but you're still moving forward, you know? And it's like
Yeah.
I think we should remember that as a society we are moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, right? And I don't know. I think there's so much stuff that even when I was a kid that we didn't consider as a society that we do now, even if not everybody is on board. And it's just
Yeah.
it's so frustrating, but it's just it's not over. Like they didn't win this victory like forever. Nothing is forever, right? We could there's always a
Yeah.
chance to fight back. There's always a chance to reinstate what we have, what we value. And what you were saying too earlier about finding your thing, like the thing that you can offer. I mean, there's so many causes, but just kind of like pick your cause and don't get overwhelmed with all of the need out there.
Yes.
But it's like book bans and libraries is a thing I'm really passionate about right now in terms of like that was a thing that we never had to worry about before this president was a president.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to be a big fight, but that's just one example, like one thing you can get involved with on the local level. Or just like instead of waiting every 4 years to vote, maybe you get more involved between the 4 years and try to try to make a
Yeah.
difference before it's like this last minute choice for everyone, you know, or
Local
just
elections really do mean something, y'all. Like they're not just there for the fun of it. It
yeah,
does affect things.
things that you've taken for granted that you realize, oh shit, I
Yeah.
have to keep fighting for that, otherwise it will go away, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been talking a lot. Eric, go ahead. Were you gonna
Yeah.
say?
I was like,
Oh,
I was looking at you because I wanted you to talk.
I was just thinking about how politics and art are kind of intertwined.
Mhm.
So from literature to visual art, um, you know, cinema, um, TV, music, anything art related, um, is directly impacted by how people emotionally handle um, change, political change in our country. And you go from, if you think about the movies and the music uh, during the Vietnam War era
Mhm.
and the kind of art that was produced then, and this this entire generation screaming for social and political change, and how that impacted literally everything that we saw and heard. Um, I feel like that is going to continue to happen now, where the kind of paintings, the kind of music, the kind of movies we watch are going to be directly impacted by our society, the things going on around us. So, like, what kind of art can you make that is going to elicit an emotional response in the viewer? What kind of art can you make that is going to speak to the kind of social change that you want to see in the world? I think that is it's something that I did back during the first 4 years of this, and it opened up doors for me because I realized it pretty quickly that there were a lot of uh, galleries and publishers out there looking for artists that were using their voice to speak to that their injustices and the lack of diversity in art, in this genre of art. And um using science fiction and fantasy art as an allegory for social change is something that we've seen from the like early writings of Ray Bradbury to the Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, going all the way back to the 1950s and the 60s. um so that's not something that's ever going to change, but we see it kind of swell, and more and more this creative outlet becomes more of a political, um, uh, more of an emotional response to the political change in our lives. And um, I just kind of like to think of it as something that could build or start careers. Somebody's career might be launched by them saying, you know what? I'm going to put everything I'm feeling on paper. I'm going to write it. I'm going to sing it. I'm going to paint it. I'm going to do something that makes me feel good. And I'm going to put it out in the world because I know there are other people out there that feel the same way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how I'm gonna get through it. just I just think about I think about Norman Rockwell, and how his what was it, his third wife made him, like, opened his eyes to the civil rights movement and what was going on, with people that didn't look like him, and which opened up a whole new portfolio of work that he was doing for Life magazine, and paintings of the civil rights movement, and all that stuff that he would have never touched on in his Saturday Evening Post days. But um, you only need somebody to really, if you're dealing with somebody that uh, voted for hate, but they are artistic and, talented, but you only need one person, that opposing voice, to come in and say, well, this is what you actually voted for. That's your guy. This is everything that is happening right now. That's your guy. Like, why don't you create something that is, a response to that?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, honestly, some of the most like it always like makes me crazy when people are like, "Oh, why are you talking about politics in your Instagram right now? Like, why are you making your art about politics?" It's like, do you not realize that some of the most resonant and culturally significant pieces of art are political in nature? Like, there is so much of it because, like, what art is what is it but the processing of all the things that we are going through right now, and how we as the artist interprets that. That's why it resonates so quickly with people, is because you see it and you understand and relate to it, and it affects you in some way, whether it makes you angry or it makes you inspired or it gives you hope. That's what it's there for. That's what music is there for. That's what writing is there for. Like, that's what art expression is there for, is to connect in a way that maybe it couldn't get through any other way, because it's directly to this, it's a conduit
Yeah.
to a universal understanding. And it makes me crazy. It's like, if anybody right now is listening and they're like, oh, why are they talking about politics? Our show has always been political in nature because our very identities have been politicized. We cannot escape politics, so we must be it. Because, like, this is what this country has made us into. And so therefore, it has to be. We have to talk about it because our identities are as marginalized people in this industry and in this country. And so this is something that is relevant to all of us. So please don't be surprised that we're talking about this. I hope nobody is. I hope that y'all came in here understanding this, but it's something that is, I think it needs to be said as well. It's when you live a life as an artist, and you are dealing with subjects like this and dealing with processing it. Even the art that I make now, my whimsical queens, can be political. If some people might be able to see it as political in nature, just because I am inserting Black people into fantasy where you don't often see Black people into fantasy. Same with Eric, same with Mia. It's just something that has been talked about time and time again, is like, oh, why are you, we're seeing it even now, like with games, like, why are you including this person into this history? This is not real history, blah, blah, blah. All this, it's just like, it's all been politicized. So sorry about it, but we gonna have to be political.
And it's like just because your history books did a great job of whitewashing things doesn't mean, people of color didn't exist in the past. Like Black people existed in history. You just never heard about them.
Oh, we were everywhere in history.
Yeah.
Let's be real. We started all this.
Seriously, exactly. But also I think the interesting thing about politics in art, I feel like it's people just responding out of discomfort, right? Where it's like it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah,
You're with your art, you're making them confront something about themselves, a worldview that it would shatter everything else they believe, and that's what they're reacting against. And then the other side of it is when like corporate, decision making, or like executives making art decisions, and it doesn't feel genuine, it doesn't feel authentic, it
yeah.
feels sort of like it's pandering, and it's like just trying to sell tickets or whatever, right? But I think any artist that has made genuine work that is what they stand behind, what their values are, and it happens to be political because of who they are or what they believe in or how they want to see the world, that's the work that changes the world. And
Yeah.
art has been doing that since the beginning. And so it is kind of a ridiculous argument to say that art shouldn't be political or that you should be quiet because you're an artist.
Yeah.
I totally respect
Agreed.
people who don't want to talk about that stuff like on social media or whatever, because that's the other aspect too, with this whole implosion of Twitter and everyone sort of migrating to blue sky and stuff. There's some people who just want to. Well, Lauren just
Okay, well.
disappeared. It's like Prius just disappeared you into another dimension. That was amazing.
Prius vanished me.
Yeah, it was great. It was like magical.
I'm gonna say, I offer an emotional support cat for
Oh,
comfort.
thank you. Thank you
No
so much.
problem.
I've been just kind of rethinking how I use social media, how I've used it in the past. Like what I'm trying to say with all this and how it ties to the topic is that I think we should like be less judgmental of how different people use their social media, because it used to be
Yeah.
almost like everyone, it was, I don't want to call it groupthink, but there was kind of a way that all artists were supposed to post, or all people were supposed to signal what they believe in and what they value. And you just have to respect that there's some people who might share all your values and just not respond in the world like you do. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of just this, I think for protests too and things like that, like it is really important to get everyone on board, and you have power in numbers. And I think that's where it all came from. But I think so much beyond just protesting or making change and things like that, like just behaviors online kind of almost felt like it was becoming mandated by the group. And I just feel really uncomfortable with that, especially with how things have turned out in terms of the
Yeah.
just the messaging online, the overly hateful messaging that's out there. It's not in our bubbles, but it's out there. And I just want people to separate a little bit more. Online stuff is really important, is how a lot of us connect with people who are like us, that maybe we don't live in an area where there's a lot of people we can connect to, and we might rely on online communities more. But I think it's really important to have both, to make sure we are also touching grass, if we've said a lot on the show, and making sure that what is the actual read in the real world
Hmm.
and online. Like one is not more real than the other, one is not more important than the other. It's all, take all that
Part of
information.
the lived experience.
Yeah, but then at the same time, at the end of the day, have confidence in how you do things, and don't let yourself be swayed so much by what everyone else feels like is pressuring you to do, because that's how we
Yeah.
get here on some level too. It's like this kind of cult-like thinking that it's so impossible. It feels so impossible to get through at some level because they're just so locked into this repeated message. I don't know. I'm talking very abstractly right now, but it makes sense
No,
in my head.
no, it makes perfect sense to me as well, because one of the big things that I like to do as a mentor and on the show as well, something that I was responding to almost in a way, is the fact that so many people do tell you, hey, you need to do this like that. You need to lead your career like this. You need to draw like this, study this thing every day. And it's like, we're all individuals, do you understand? We can't do every single thing in the same way. Nobody can do that. But when you sell a message that everybody has to conform to the same exact thing, then there's going to naturally be tension there. It's like, I can't conform to that. What is like, do I even belong in this community if I can't conform to that? And then there's all this doubt. And then you seek elsewhere where you feel like you do fit in. And sometimes where you think you do fit in are less than healthy communities, but you feel heard and seen. And so that's where you gravitate to. When you speak in absolutes, you can tend to alienate people, which is why I hate speaking in absolutes. I always like to be like, do what works for you. Whatever makes you happy, do what works for you. However you like to fight, do what works for you. That's why I say some people have time, some people have money, some people have resources, some people don't have anything and just need to rest. Some people want to make art that is purely an escape and doesn't tackle any political topics. And I think people need that as much as the political art,
Yeah.
because sometimes we need to not think about this and we need to go somewhere that dreams of being a better place. And I love personally escape art. It makes me very happy. So like all of these roles are important. Just try not to do absolutely nothing, but sometimes, but do rest. Everybody should rest. Everybody needs a way to kind of back up and allow themselves to recharge, because if you burn yourself out absorbing all the stuff and trying to think of things every single day, then it's going to be less likely that you keep up the fight. But I think a big thing to do is figure out what you can do. I think, Mia, you touched on this already. Figure out what you can do for your community. Figure out a thing to focus on. If it's just making art, if it's making escape art, if it's making, political art, if it's all the things that we already talked about, find it and get incrementally better at it and just keep going. Don't take yourself out of the fight so early because you thought you could try to do everything all at once. And then you're like, well, this is doing nothing, because, we are also a culture that's been conditioned to instant gratification. So you're like, this is doing nothing. Like, maybe I should just not do anything at all. So it's like, that's also kind of by design. Like, that's my conspiracy theory, which is not really conspiracy theory. It's just like, I think social media was kind of designed to make us accept 30-second package things. But I was listening to a video and she was like, the revolution is not bite-sized. The revolution takes concerted time and effort and resources and communities and building and a lot of combined efforts. So yeah, if your community is online, find that community online. If your community is in person, find that community in person. But I think community is probably one of the most important things. But yeah, that kind of absolutism, it's like, it must be like this, it must be like that, it must be like nothing. Like, do what you can, do it however it best works for you.
We
Make art
can't,
however it best works for you.
sorry, I was gonna say we can't afford to lose allies at this point. Like, just,
You really
you know what I
can't.
mean? Like, it's just like we all need to find what we can do and work together, and just, if your fight is just surviving these 4 years, that is enough. Because I think there are more marginalized communities, like, I would not ask anything of them aside from just preserve yourself, preserve your ability to make art, and then everyone else should do more, honestly, because it's like there's just a lot. And I think for a lot of people, surviving is going to be a full-time job, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
For artists out there that are looking for ways to apply politics or an art, or look at any kind of inspirational imagery that combines politics and art, you don't have to look far, because um, if you go back to art created during the Great Depression, during World War II, there's some amazing Russian painters that are doing huge battlefield, very violent paintings, really somber imagery where, soldiers are returning home. Um, there are paintings from the Civil War. Every time there's some kind of major political upheaval in the aftermath of that, there's art to go along with it. Um, right up until present day, there are artists out there that focus on social change, realist social activists, painters. But yeah, I mean, I just taking a quick little dive looking at um, art created throughout the decades has really been insightful. Just to show that this is not something that some new revelation, we're coming up with. Oh, you make political art. People have been making it for over a century.
Yeah.
So well over.
Oh, well over.
Yeah.
It permeates through culture. It's like, think of a famous art piece during World War II. It's like, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's just like, you know.
Right. Right. That Rosie the Riveter.
That's it.
Oh yeah, that and
You can do it.
yeah, all of the Uncle Sam imagery,
Mhm.
and the murals, the Rockefeller murals, all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
problem we all live with. Is that what it's called? The problem we all live with?
yeah,
Yeah, okay, I was right. That was the
yeah,
title. Yeah, like all these images like
Mhm.
live in my head rent free. They're political.
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of them are propaganda, but that's also political.
Yeah. I mean, movies too. Honestly, there's so
Oh,
many
absolutely.
political movies that are entertaining, that are entertainment to this day, and that changed the way we see the world, changed books as well. And I mean, Octavia Butler, everyone's talking
Oh my
about
God.
The Sower right now, and it's like,
I was literally reading Parable, the Sower, and I'm like, this is
yeah, right?
Well, when you
I was
talk
like, I
about
don't know if I can finish it. This
escapism,
is a lot right now.
well, when you talk about escapism entertainment, if you go back to Wizard of Oz, 1939, yeah, that was escapism entertainment, the
But
first full
also,
color, but full color, motion picture, but it was also heavy political
Mhm.
references throughout that movie.
Yeah, it's super.
Um,
undertones and
and
overtones.
and then coming out of Vietnam, people that escapism entertainment, Star Wars,
Star Trek.
Mhm.
wars, emphasis on
Yeah,
war.
Star Trek and Wars. Yeah.
Again,
Right?
It wasn't, Luke's, having a great time going to the,
Star
high school
Vacation.
dance or something. Yeah, he's not going on vacation to another planet. He's blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of political,
Yeah.
and but we find a way to be inspired by the kind of work that is created
Hmm.
from these kinds of change, from this kind of change, and the ripple effect. I think of the ripple effect of Star Wars,
Hmm.
you know, and how many people are in our industry now because of something that this one guy was inspired to write because of the change going on around him.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the thing that really does fascinate me about art is the fact that really what people choose to depict in art, it gains an importance as it spreads across, people's eyeballs. And, say for example, like in the 1960s, people decided like to never portray Black people at all in art. It's just like it would not have helped the fight to not see our faces anywhere. It wouldn't have helped the fight to not see a Black person in Star Trek.
Hmm.
And despite everything, it was a radical move, and changed the landscape of what we can do in television, what we can do in fiction, in sci-fi, in fantasy. As an artist, as all artists, we have a special power to really touch people's minds and to show things that people haven't been thinking about or haven't quite seen before, or we can make connections that people haven't made yet. And it really does transform the minds. It's like this is about mental health, but like what led me to even get an ADHD diagnosis was a comic about a girl struggles with ADHD and her describing it as like wading through a river when everybody else is walking on land. And that singular comic, I was like, that's my entire life experience. I think I need to go get diagnosed. And now I'm able to get myself help. It's just like having that kind of effect on the kind of scale that so many artists can reach. Like that's power. That's real power. And again, I know that like not everybody's going to be able to do it or be able to reach all these people, or it's not about reaching everybody. It's about reaching who you can affect.
Yeah.
Our show is not like the most popular show in the world. It's not the biggest thing ever, but every single comment that says this show actually made me want to draw today. This show made me want to get back into art. Like that's what it's about.
Yeah.
If we can affect one person's life, we will have done our job. And any other artists out like who is listening, if you can just touch one person, if you can give somebody hope to keep going one more day, that's what keeps you making art. Whether it's escapism or whether it's a political thing or whether it's something that's changed somebody's mind or created empathy or encouraged somebody to move to kindness. Because I really do think it's kindness and empathy that will get us through and restore whatever values we have seemingly lost over these past 8 years that it seems to have withered away. They're still there. There's still people out there making moves to make the world a better place. And I think we can't forget that. There was a recent post that I saw on Instagram. It's just like all the things that the Black community has done during the first presidency in 2016 to 2020. And there were some incredible things that happened during that time that the community has made. It's like Black Panther, Get Out, all these like inroads of like these like different forms of expression. Again, the protests making like, new regulations and better for people working and people just like on a global recognition, on a global scale, people understanding, oh, this is a problem and it needs to change. Like we can touch people's lives. We really can. And so we don't know what's going to happen at all. And I can't say it's all going to be okay. But what I can say is that there's ways that we can move to making things a little bit better than they were yesterday, at least around our immediate vicinity, even if it's within ourselves. Everybody has something that they can do. And I encourage you all to find what that is for yourself. I know this was a heavier episode, but keep fighting the good fight, y'all. Whatever you got to do it. We are posting links in the YouTube description of if you want to support causes that are trying to make the world a better place. They're down below. Again, participate in your local elections, activate your community, look into mutual aid, look into the things that you can do as an individual together with the people who you can also uplift. See what we can do. If you like the show, if you like what we do, this is our little part right here. Please feel free to support us by just leaving a like, leaving a comment. For everybody who participated in the live chat, thank you so much. We appreciate the conversation and the engagement. Thank you all for being here. I hope this gives you something to hold, even if it's for a little bit. It would really make our day if you shared that with us. But if you want to have more conversation with us, the Painted in Color podcast discussion group on Facebook. I've been doing a very bad job of keeping it updated, but I'll post about the episode there. Until then, take care of yourselves and take care of each other, y'all. We love you all very much. Thank you. Talk to you later.